So well, it's more fitness and more diet related actually. So the topic we're talking about today, guys, is the psychological impact of dieting. So that could be the impact psychologically during, and it can impact on how it's affected yourself afterwards with food and dieting. So I'm gonna speak to Quibs first because he's probably between us, probably the last one who's done any kind of dieting or prep. So he's probably got like
Yeah.
I'd assume a better memory with it. So Quibs, talk to me. How has dieting affected you psychologically?
I think I just became a lot more sure, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like patience. Because I think there's a thing where when I think of dieting, I think mainly dieting to prepare myself for a comp. And I'd argue that the way you kind of cut down for a comp in terms of bodybuilding is more on the extreme side of dieting than moderate diets are. Moderate diets, you can afford to take your time a lot more. Whereas depending on where you were before you start your cut as a bodybuilder, when you're cutting is it's hard. There's no two ways about it. And I think for me, when I first started dieting, I was working construction at the time. So then I was on minimal calories, doing a physically intense job, cardio in the morning, and then training after. And like you just feel drained all the time. I remember, I think one thing that Luke Sando said that kind of resonates with me is that one time during one of his preps, he came back in from the gym, and like his partner at the time sitting on the couch, and he didn't even say hello or anything like that. He just went straight to the kitchen, put his food in the microwave, ate, and slept. Like his mind was so focused on what he's doing that he just went straight to the food. After that, it's like, to a certain extent, for the first time you do it, your mind, you kind of think of you kind of broken down to kind of like think of basics and like the basics to survival. I think for me, it's like, not that I became selfish, but it's more, I just had to focus on what I put my energy in to at the time because I had very little energy to put into anything anyway. Yeah. I think that's kind of like a vague-ish effect of what that, but I think, in general, I think even another anecdote is that another guy who was prepping in my gym, he cried when he dropped his protein shake after a training session.
Oh wow!
He's just
like sad cry or like frustration cry.
I didn't see it happen. So this is the second I story.
Okay. Like, is it one of the like a baby, or was he like tense face, like trying to hold it back? I'm curious.
From what the trainer told me is that he was prepping a client for a shirt. And after the session he did with him, he went to the change room, brought out a shaker, shaking it, and he's coming out of the change room, shaking it, and it drops, and like the lid comes off, it's all on the ground now. And I just start crying. I don't know. He didn't go into details about like the kind of cry it was, but I think,
of course not.
I bet he was looking forward to that all session. I bet it was like a nice flavour, like a strawberry, and that was his nice sweet taste that day, and it's gone.
It's gone.
And that's devastating when you're on like 8 calories a day. Protein shake. It's just and you have to clear it, and you just don't have it in you. You just like, you look at it like, no, not again, no.
Forget this comp.
Before we move on to myself and Max, if I just probe you, Quibs, a little bit. So like, I've got the gist of how you felt during. Is there anything that you kind of, I can put it, carried on with afterwards? So let's say you're done dieting, you're normal Quibs now. You kind of eat what you want or whatever it might be. You're eating as much as you would want to eat. Is there anything you learned from dieting that carried over afterwards, whether that might be like how your mindset is in terms of I like to eat on these certain times, or any new kind of food or meals that you kind of tend to like more because you had it more often during dieting? Or is there anything that kind of changed for you afterwards, basically?
I think
that's what I want to ask.
In terms of mindset, I did build a whole lot more mental resilience.
Okay.
In the sense that, but that was both due to prep. Well, prep is mainly the diet. I would argue that when it comes to bodybuilding prep, the training comes secondary to the diet. You still need to train, but if you're not dieting, there's not much can happen. So knowing that I can push myself to stay disciplined over that time and achieve results. For me, it was a time of growth, personal growth for me, because it's like, okay, this is the most challenged I've ever been. I've done other things that challenge me in the past, but nothing to this extent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In terms of food that I learned I liked or not, I'm not gonna lie, I had big envy for Luke, how he could have these cookies as his pre-workout and that. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, you'll give me, is it rice flakes? And rice flakes that I'm eating and I'm just like, this is not doing it for me. Rice flakes and it's not even any sort of peanut almond butter. Rice flakes and whey isolate.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was
No,
thinking like, what kind of baby food is this? Like, I feel I can sympathize with them now when they're spitting out their food. I know what you're going through. Yeah, because I was just there watching the stories. Like, you're having these cookies, and you call them mosquito cookies, and you're giving me Sundo rice flakes. Like, what's going on here?
Is he M brand?
Yeah,
It's got to sell them.
It's a thing where I knew I did what I had to do to get my body to where it needed to go, and I feel like I've learned that I don't really have limits in what I can do. It's more how far I'm willing to go. Mm-hmm. So I think that's definitely one of the carryovers from dieting. That's one of the things that I enjoyed about it. It's me learning new things about myself per se and seeing how my body transformed. Because when you diet for a show like that, you see your body transform in a matter of days. Because you get to the points where your body fat drops so low that in a few days you can see that, oh, there's a new vein that I haven't seen there before.
Things like start chasing like the finer details,
yeah, and you start getting more gassed, and like you seeing the changes in your body pushes you to push more.
So, me and Max got quite an interesting story about it. I just do it really quickly, just because it came to my mind. It's just always interesting. I remember when I was prepping Max for his show, and like Max was shredded. Like, we're talking, Max is like, he's got lines everywhere, but like we were so obsessed with getting this one quad line just to pop more, and like I think we probably went too obsessed with it, because I think he must have lost maybe just like a good 6 or 7 pounds just for one line, just to get that one line, and we're like, okay, cool, now we're satisfied. But like when we look back at his photos, Max was like show ready like 5-6 weeks out, man. Like, it was ridiculous, but we were like, no, we're nailing down, we want this finer detail. So yeah, that's just a cool segue into how we can get obsessed with in prep with like the small things.
Well, no, so we basically prepped together, right?
Yeah.
So for our last prep, anyway. So I know what it looked like from the outside, and I know how you're feeling because I was feeling it as well. But what did you feel like mentally? What were your thoughts during? Because you had more responsibility than me, because you were prepping yourself and you were prepping me. So how did you feel psychologically for yourself? And did you have more stress, or did you get really into the dieting?
I can give it to like a coach's perspective. So a coach's perspective, especially because I was prepping you as well, I kind of looked at myself and thought there's more pressure for me because I've also got to set an example as well as helping you. Like, you can do as well as you can, and I can obviously get some credit, but it doesn't really show off as well as if I don't really do well myself.
Yeah.
So I had that extra added pressure mentally to do well with myself as well as that. And then with dieting, again, this is the difference between a coach and client. When you're doing it yourself, you've always got another voice in your head that kind of wants you to do things differently. But because you're making the decisions, it's so easy to kind of always maybe chop or change or second guess what you're doing. Whereas that's the whole reason why we hire coaches, so you don't have that problem. So I was dealing with that issue as well as also thinking of the finer details with Max's stuff and trying to make sure he's on track and all that kind of everything. So yeah, that was one of the, I'd say, kind of the things I had to worry about when doing my diet.
And what about afterwards? It's all said and done. We finish the shoot. You go and have your jerk chicken and rice spicy curry thing with your patties. And I still remember. You know, I watched that video the other day. I think it was like 3 weeks ago. I might have just done what I was looking through my videos for things to delete. I didn't delete it because I just like having it on my phone.
To remember,
just watching you eat that meal. From once you've had that meal and you're now on the way back up, what are you thinking about? What do you think about food? What do you think about training? Do you care? Are you really happy? Because obviously you've been stressing out for weeks.
When you're deep into dieting, I'd say the last few weeks, there's only two things you're thinking about. I'm sure you guys can vouch for this. One is obviously the deadline, so the show or the photo shoot. But the other thing is, what are you going to eat afterwards?
Yeah.
So like, I'm sure we all had our own notes section. Like, right, this is going to be my diet for afterwards. Meal 1, meal 2, meal 3, meal 4. I still had it. I put it on my Instagram. I was so obsessed. I even put it on my stories. I remember putting it on my stories. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to have this meal, this meal, this meal. So I showed everyone. I remember one of them was, it was porridge with,
I know where this is going.
what's it? Grenade cookie spread.
Yeah.
And 2 triple chocolate cookies from Sainsbury's broken up on it. And I think caramel syrup. Oh man, and I had that once. But that's the thing. I don't know if you guys realize this, is you get so obsessed with food when you're dieting, but then when you have it for me, when I have it just once, I'm so easily like, okay, I'm over it. Like, I think after 2-3 days after dieting, I was over it, and then I'm a bit like, did I really like try hard? And then you second guess yourself, did I really try hard enough beforehand? Like, how can I be dissatisfied so soon? And then you second guess yourself in that sense. But yeah, but to stay on topic for just my mental being during dieting, I think one of the things that kind of affects us a lot is just, yeah, like I said, do you think you're good enough at this point? Could I be better? Should I have been bigger beforehand before I started dieting? All that kind of stuff. And those are all things that I think you shouldn't really worry about, because there's nothing you can do. You're already here at this point, so the best thing you can do is just do the best you can right now. That's probably what I would tell myself now, looking back.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You know what you said about that meal that you decided to have? That's a classic thing that happens. I can't remember the exact term. I'd have to go look at my notes. It's about food combining, and people who've been dieting for a long time, they get this. Some people can develop this weird obsession with food combinations that ordinarily you wouldn't want to put together, but for some reason you're eating that meal. You wouldn't put those together. Would you eat that now? No, it's ridiculous. It sounds absolutely disgusting. No. But when you're hungry, it sounds great, because they're all things you want. So you stick them together because that makes sense. Why not? But if people have been dieting for a long, I learned this on my course, you diet for a long time and you get this weird thing about food combinations, and you don't really know how to properly construct a meal anymore. You're just putting things together for the sake of it because you can now. And that's a big problem. When you go down that path and you're putting sugars and fats and all this, everything nice, sugar and spice, you're putting it all together just to make this ridiculous meal because you can, instead of what's a smart thing to do. And that's like, it messes with your mind, and then your relationship with food is kind of all over the place. Because you've got no one, people don't take enough care after the diet. They don't reverse diet. They don't diet out in a smart way that won't basically, pardon my French, fuck them up long term. And you can undo a lot of good work. This is not just bodybuilding. This is just regular people dieting. They do a diet for some reason, and then they got no way of coming out of it, and they just rebound. There's a lot of rebounding. That's what happens. They don't know how to come back out or level off. For dieting psychology, if we go from the beginning, why are you doing a diet? If your reason for doing your diet is very important to you, you will make it work. You have to be committed to the reason. If you've got, let's just pick anyone, a husband and wife, and they want to lose a bit of weight for their wedding in 6 months' time, that wedding has to be more important than eating food for you, or eating the same food that you've been eating. If it's not, then you won't commit to it, and it won't work. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that you didn't prioritize it. Dieting has to be your priority between that thing and whatever is stopping you. So for anyone, make sure you're committed to that reason. That reason has to be important. And also with a coach, you can have the best coach, but if your priority isn't dieting, that coach can't do anything for you.
No.
So for bodybuilders, if you're doing a show and you've got this set time limit, most bodybuilders, I would say, are very committed to that show. So dieting will always be a priority. So like Quib said, bodybuilders love training generally. That's how they probably started being a bodybuilder or a competitive bodybuilder, because they love the training first. So training's never really the problem. It's the dieting. And if you will commit to it if you're doing a show. Now, halfway through is when you start to think, do I really want to diet anymore? I miss eating food. From a personal standpoint, the show was the most important thing in the entire world. And I based my whole day and week and those 4 months was for the show. Work was second to the show. I didn't stop working. I just prioritized my food and my training sessions to make sure they fit properly. And if they didn't, I'd move my work around to fit my meal times. I made sure that was the priority. I'd go out to social events, but make sure I took my food with me. There was no way I was going to miss a meal. I don't mind saying I'm extremely good at bodybuilding when it comes to dieting, but Nathan says this before, bodybuilding is not good for me. But I am good at dieting in bodybuilding because there's just nothing else for me. I don't really care, not on purpose, but there's no way I'm missing a gram of this or that. So for me, the dieting is super easy, as in it's easy because I know I'm going to do it. There's no question. So I can't really give anyone good advice about how to be good at bodybuilding prep, because I think some people just are. They could definitely give some advice on how not to do it. No, you don't have to be so strict. You can give yourself a bit of leeway here and there. It makes you really, really neurotic, and it makes neurotic people more neurotic. So if you've already got a very obsessive personality, dieting is almost definitely going to make you more obsessive and might bring out some bad traits. You get very irritable.
Yeah, I was
very angry. You're tired.
Would you guys? Would you guys think of the stigma or of the assumption of people dieting, especially bodybuilders, because they do it more extreme, like extreme dieting, and how it can affect people's mood and how they treat others around them and stuff? Do you think that's a given? Do you think that's down to the person? Do you think what's your thoughts on that?
Quibs, what have you seen from people's mood when dieting?
I'll go into my own mood when I diet. It's more, I'll be honest with you, if you say that hunger or any sort of mental state and physical state does not affect you, you would have to be lying to yourself. Because it's like, for example, if you're in pain, that's going to affect how you relate to other people around you.
Yeah.
And if it's long-term chronic pain, your general mood may be lower than it actually is when you're not in pain. So I would say it's a similar thing with hunger as well, because that's one of the main things you struggle with when you're prep. But I would argue that if you're conscious that, okay, I'm hungry, so I should be aware that this is how I may come across. I reckon that the stereotype is there for a reason, first and foremost, because it's a thing where there are people where it affects them to such an extent where these things do happen. And especially, for example, me, when I first time prepping, I was definitely a lot more, like I said, usually I have a lot of patience. I was quite short in prepping because it's like my mind was focused on the competition, but I was stressing a bit about it because I was still learning how to pose. Yeah. I think those kind of things come into it when you're prepping for a bodybuilding show. But I would argue that if you are not aware that these things can affect your mood, it will affect your mood a lot more because you're thinking you're being normal, but your normal is not your actual normal. Yeah. If that makes sense. So yeah, I'm not sure if you two agree with me there, but
no, you made a really, really good point. Again, one of the Quib's highlights for me. You made a really good point. For someone like me who's been in the industry as long as I have, you kind of taught me something there, which I never really kind of thought. Maybe I did, but not to the extent you said. Yeah. And you said how hunger, especially long-term, like chronic hunger, especially with diet, it's like being through pain, but for a long time. And when you're suffering and you're going through pain, whether it be like inward or outward, there's a reaction to it. So like doing chronic dieting, you could say the reaction to that, because you could say it's a form of pain, which is what I gathered from you saying that. And then the outward reaction to that would be, I don't know, short mood, maybe a bit of frustration, saying what's in your mind without thinking. So yeah, no, you made a really good point. I like that.
I think also with dieting, because it happens gradually. So say you're doing 12, 16, 20 week diet, your mood doesn't suddenly just drop in the first week. It will gradually drop. So the people around you might not notice it to begin with, and you might not notice yourself. You might be trying to be hyper aware, like I'm going to be hungry. I'm going to try and be more patient this week because my calories are lower, blah, blah. But it's hard to do that. You don't really notice, and you get into this rabbit hole 10 weeks in, and suddenly you've got absolutely no patience, and you're saying things to your friends that you think is okay. But if you looked back and watched the video of yourself, you're like, wow, that guy is so rude. Why is anyone even speaking to him? or how has your girlfriend not left you earlier? There's no way you would keep people around. But yeah, I think we've all had moments like that we regret, and we go back, and I apologize to people about the way that I acted, which seemed okay at the time.
Yeah.
And then you go back and say, oh, mentally, I was not there. I was so engrossed in my own little world that it wasn't important. It was a regional amateur natural bodybuilding show. No one gave a fuck apart from me and Nathan.
Yeah.
No one else cared. That was it.
I like that in Nathan, you know.
Well, Nathan cared because I was like Nathan's trophy on stage. Like he wanted me to look good because he looks good when I look good, and it's just mental. It's mental. You react, but it's hard because you just get on that slope, don't you? And then by the end, and then afterwards, food is you have no self-control. No, nothing. No self-control at all. Like every day is between 7,000 and 10,000 calories. You're not even trying. You're just scoffing it. You're scoffing it down. And the worst thing is, you look better. You look better. You're just really pissed off at yourself. Oh my god.
Yeah.
And you get in your own head. Was my diet right? Blah blah blah. Oh, so annoying.
As in, my second prep was a lot easier than my first, and I think I learned to have more fun prepping. If that makes sense, and actually is appreciating it for what it was. As in, I became a whole lot less short for my second prep, which was I think probably 7 weeks or 5, 6, 7 weeks for my first comp. But it's like, okay, I've already done it now. There's a whole lot less stress associated with the event. It's more, okay, cool. I know this is what I need to do to get to where I need to get to. But I would say this though, it's like, me personally, going through it again, I would probably do the best of my efforts to move the things I know to be stressors in my life or step away from it, if that makes sense. And then do me. So for example, like I'll probably just take myself out to the cinema on my ones.
Yeah.
Like have more me time during prep than spending time on people who may cause you to get into like small arguments and little things like that, because it's small sort of things said trigger you, whereas easily you have a lot more patience for those kind of things. But it's like, if you could remove stresses from your life, remove them whilst you're prepping, and just do more things to kind of like enjoy time and just enjoy yourself during prep, because it's like, it doesn't all have to be 12 weeks or that's misery until you get to the stage you're like, I'm here at last. You can have fun whilst doing it, for sure.
Bit more flexibility.
Yeah.
You can have structure, but it doesn't have to be to the gram.
It doesn't have to take over your life, pretty much.
Yeah. I think that makes sense.
I can hear Ling like sniggering behind me.
Yeah. Does she want to come on to tell us what she thinks about how you were
Ling, what's so funny?
He was a dick. I hated him.
She's got headphones in. She's probably watching TikTok.
Oh, she's looking now.
Yeah.
She's looking like she's gone.
Yeah.
Episode
I never
17.
mind. Anyway.
Just back again. Just back again.
All right. No more.
No more. Get out.
Show me after. That's our relationship, is just showing each other funny videos.
Memes and gifs.
Anyway, all right, guys. On that topic, we're gonna move. Unless you guys have anything else to say, are you happy to move on to our seasonals? Let's get into some out in there.
If anyone has any questions about this, direct them all to Max or Nate.
If anybody helps need dieting, contact maxleynorman@gmail.com. No, it's fine.
Hey.